All right, in this video, I am going to take you through the 12 questions of this section, just sort of show you how I would do the question. Feel free to use this video or the question help or any of the other videos provided in my labs to help you out. Also, feel free to text me anytime you have questions. Okay, the first question says, solve 3x squared equals 6. Okay, so 3x squared is equal to 6. To solve that, I need x on the side by itself. I need to get rid of that 3, so I'll divide both sides by 3. I get x squared is equal to 2. In order to solve this, I need to get rid of the squared, so I can use the square root property. So I can square root this side. As long as I do, I square root this side. When you do the square root principle, you need to include a plus or minus, because I could square, I could have two answers for that. So it'll be the plus or minus square root of 2. So my answer is x is equal to the positive or negative square root of 2. So that's the solution. Now in the question it says, that's for A. And then B it says find the x-intercept. So where does it cross the x-axis? So there and there. And those points are whatever the solutions to this equation are. So if the solution is this, then I would say that my x-intercepts, this is for question B, the x-intercepts, you always have to write them as a coordinate pair. So the x coordinate would be root 2 and the y coordinate would be 0. That'd be one of them. And the other one would be the negative root 2 and 0. So those would be the two x-intercepts. Okay, notice the relationship between solving a quadratic equation and finding the x-intercepts. They come up to the same numbers. You just write them slightly differently. So here the solutions for A, I should have written that. I would just write plus or minus square root 2. So those would be the solutions. The x-intercepts for where they cross are down there. Question number 2, similar kind of question. It says solve that equation. So 9x squared is, I'm going to move the 25 over, so it becomes minus 25. Now, we've done a little bit of work with the square root of a negative number. This will come into play here. I want to solve for x squared, so I'll divide both sides by 9, like that. And then I need to square root principle, so I have this over 9, and I'll need to take the square root of that. So square root this side, those cancel, square root this side, and I have to remember my plus or minus. So it'll be x is equal to the plus or minus. Now here I've got a square root of a negative, so I'm going to write that separately. And I'm actually going to separate all of those, the sign, the numerator, and the denominator. So I'll write square root negative 1, square root 25, over square root 9. So that's going to come out to the square root of negative 1 is an I, square root of 25 is 5, square root of 9 is 3. So I probably could rewrite that as 5 over 3i. Now there's one thing I forgot, and that's that plus or minus. So I should have a plus or minus in front of each of those. So that would be my solution to that equation. In B, they say find the x-intercepts. Well, here's the x-axis, and that graph up here isn't coming anywhere near the x-axis. So you would say something like no solution, or there are no x-intercepts, something like that. Question number 3 says give the exact solutions. Okay, so I don't need to graph this one, so I'm just giving the solutions. So I have x plus 2 squared is equal to 64. I want to get at the x, so I'm going to use a square root principle. I'd have to do that to both sides. This will cancel, leaving me with just x plus 2. And then on this side, I have to remember that plus or minus. So it'll be plus or minus square root of 64, and the square root of 64 is just 8. So now I've got two answers here. And whenever you have a quadratic, when x is squared, there's always going to be two answers. So I have x plus 2 is a positive 8, or x plus 2 is a negative 8. So here I'll subtract 2 on both sides. I get x is equal to 6. Subtract 2 on both sides. I get x is equal to negative 10. So that is that one. Next question, number 4. Solve this one. Oh, now this one, on the last one, there wasn't an x term. Oh, I was able to get rid of it. Here, I've got 3 terms. So, like I have an x squared, an x, and a number. So with these ones, I always want to make it equal to 0 so that I can use a 0 property. Okay, oh, but it says solve by completing the square. Okay, check that. They want me to complete the square. So I won't do this part. Let me erase that. I guess I should read instructions. So to complete the square, x squared plus 2x is equal to 10. So I want to do this the same as I did that last question where I had x plus something all squared is equal to something over here, and I square rooted things immediately. I want to sort of get to that point right there. So I need to create a perfect square on the left side. And the way you do that is you always take this number here, the 2, the one in front of the x. You take the 2 and you divide it by 2, and then you square that answer. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 1 squared is 1. So I'm going to add 1 to here. That'll make this a perfect square. But if I add 1 to this side, I also have to add 1 to that side. Okay, so now on this left side, I'm going to factor that. So it'll be x plus 1 and x plus 1 is equal to 11. And x plus 1, there's 2 of them, so I can just write it like this. See, I'm getting into that form there. Now I can square root both sides. So I'll square root this side, square root this side. Don't forget your plus minus there. So on the left side, those cancel, leaving you with x plus 1. And on the right side, I have plus or minus root 11. I need to solve for x, so I'll subtract 1 on both sides. So I'll get x is equal to, and usually we write this number first, so I'll go negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 11. So that'll be the solution to that equation using completing the square. Completing the square is sometimes if your number right here is an odd number, it makes it so you have fractions and it's a bit more difficult completing the square. Also, if you have a number up front, it makes it a little bit more difficult to complete the square. But you can check the videos or the question help if you get one like that. Okay, your next question. Solve by completing the square. Oh, again. All right, so I have x squared minus 18x is equal to 415. So I'm going to take the 18, divide it by 2, and square it. So 18 divided by 2 is 9, squared is 81. So I'm going to add 81 on this side. I can do that as long as I add 81 on that side. On the left side, I'll factor this now. So it'll be x minus 9, x minus 9 is equal to, what will this be, 496, I think. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, on the left side, there's 2x minus 9, so I can write them like that. And now I'll square root both sides. Square root that, square root that. Leaving me with x minus 9 is equal to, okay, what's the square root of 496? Bring on the calculator. Um, 496 square root. Oh, it doesn't come out even. Oh, darn. So square root 496. And it has to be plus or minus. But that 496, I'm sure you can simplify that a little bit. Let's try that. So what if I divide 496 by 16? Well, that comes out even. I was lucky. 16 and 31. So x minus 9 is equal to plus or minus root 16 times 31. So that'll be x minus 9 is equal to plus or minus, square root of 16 is 4 root 31. Now I need to solve for x, so I'll add 9 on both sides. And like the other time, I'll write the 9 first. So it'll be 9 plus or minus 4 root 31. And that'll be my answer. Okay, next one. Solve that equation and then find the x-intercepts. So same thing as the last question, one or not the last one before. If I solve this, it'll tell me what my x-intercepts are. Okay, I could take this and try and complete the square, but because of that 7, it makes me a bit hesitant to do that. I could try and factor this, but two numbers that multiply to 9 and add to 7, there aren't any. So factoring is not going to work. So I would probably resort now to using the quadratic formula. So minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So this formula will tell you what the x-intercepts are. It'll actually solve this equation, and it tells you what the x-intercepts are. When I do the formula, I always put in brackets in place of the letters. If you do that, you'll make way less mistakes with negative signs. All over 2 times something. Okay, so the number out front of the x squared is a, the number out front of the x is b, and the last constant number is c. So a is 1, b is 7, c is negative 9. Okay, so b is 7, b another 7 there, a is a 1, and c is a negative 9. All over 2 times a is a 1. Okay, so now to simplify this, I'll have x is equal to a minus 7 plus or minus. Okay, 7 squared is 49. Minus 4 times 1 is minus 4 times minus 9 is a positive 36. Careful with that. All over 2 times 1 is 2. So x is equal to minus 7 plus or minus the square root 49 plus 36. That comes out to what? 85 over 2. It'd be nice to simplify that 85. 5 will go in there. 5 goes to 117. Yeah, I'm not gonna, there won't be any perfect squares in that. Nope, sorry. I'll have to leave her just like that. Next question. Okay, this formula is used to approximate the distance feet object falls freely from rest in t seconds. The height of the building is 1419. How long would it take? So the height is the distance, that's s. So here's my formula, s equals 16t squared, and they're saying s is 1419. So 1419 is equal to 16t squared. They want me to solve for t, so I'll first divide both sides by 16. I don't think that'll go in evenly. 1419 divides 16. Maybe I'll just leave it like that as a fraction. And then I have to use the square root principle. So square root this side, square root this side, plus or minus. Now it's asking for a time. It probably doesn't make sense to use the minus there. So we'll just use the plus. So then time, this will cancel out, is equal to, okay, so on your calculators, just do square root 1419 over 16. Let me do that. I come up with 9.41740, etc. They say round as nearest tenth, that's 1 decimal place. So I would say my time is equal to 9.4. Okay, next question. Here they say solve this one. And so again, I could complete the square. That might be, oh, maybe I did this question earlier. I could try and factor it. Things that multiply to 10 add to 2. 2 and 5, no, that has a difference of 3. Yeah, factor, not going to work. Off I go then. Minus b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over a couple of a's. So minus something plus or minus square root something squared minus 4 times a couple somethings all over 2 something. Okay, now plug in my numbers in. B is a 2. A is a 1. C, another negative, negative 10. A is a 1. So make sure you know what your A, B's, and C's are. And make sure you don't mess up on the negative signs. Okay, so x is equal to negative 2 plus or minus square root 2 squared would be 4. Negative 4 times 1 is negative 4 times negative 10 would be plus 40 all over 2. So x is equal to minus 2 plus or minus root 44 all over 2. That 44, we can break that down. That's 11 times 4, and 4 is a perfect square root. Yeah, I can do that. So x equals minus 2 plus or minus root 4 times root 11 all over 2. So it's minus 2 plus or minus 2 root 11 all over 2. And you're probably thinking, hey, there's a bunch of 2's there. Can you simplify? And sure enough, you can. You have to divide this bottom 2 into both terms in the top there, this one and this one. A way I like to write it is, since the 2 at the bottom is a common denominator, just write it underneath each one. So minus 2 over 2 plus or minus 2 root 11 over 2. And here you see those 2's cancel, so do these. This one will wind up to be a 1 on the top. So my answer will be negative 1 plus or minus root 11. And notice the 2's on the bottom both got canceled, so there won't be any denominator. That'll be my answer. Question number 9. Solve this one. Same thing. Try to factor, can't factor it, so I'd use the quadratic formula. I'm just going to try and do it by memory. So minus b, b is a negative 1, minus b plus or minus square root. B squared, b is a negative 1 squared, minus 4 times a is a 1 times c is a 10, all over 2 times a is a 1. Did I get all those plugged in right? I think I'm good. So x equals, this will be a positive 1 plus or minus square root. Negative 1 squared is a positive 1. Minus 4 times 1 times 10 is a minus 40. Ooh, there's going to be some minus stuff happening up there. So this will be 1 plus or minus the square root of negative 39 all over 2. Now they probably want it written as a complex number because you're taking the square root of a negative. So let's do that. 1 plus or minus square root 39 times the square root of negative 1 all over 2. And the square root of 30, or the square root of negative 1 is an I all over 2. And lastly, they often will have you separate those two. So it would be 1 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 39 over 2i. That's sort of the format they like to have it written in the end. Okay, that's too much quadratic formula. Well, it's good to get practice. So question number 10 says solve this, find the x-intercepts. Same kind of thing. So to solve this, I'd like to go 3 times 7 is 35. Things that multiply to 35 add to 5. There aren't any. So again, I'm going with the quadratic formula, where a is 3, b is a negative 5, c is a negative 7. So negative b is a negative 5, plus or minus. Square root b is a negative 5 squared, minus 4 times a is a 3, and c is a negative 7. All over 2 times a is a 3. Notice how the negatives can get you. These two negatives here cancel, so this would be positive 5 plus or minus. Careful with the negative 5 squared on your calculator. It's negative 5 times negative 5, which is a positive 25. Minus 4 times 3 is 12, times 7 I think is 84. So it'll be a positive 84 all over 6. Doing some more simplifying there. I'll have x is equal to 5 plus or minus 25 and 84 would be 109 over 6. There's no negative under the square root, so that's good. And 109, I don't think I can simplify that. 3 won't go into that. I think I'm stuck right there. So if they want you to solve, this would be the solution. If they want the x-intercepts, it would be, remember we have to do the 2 points like that. So these would be the x values. So you just write it as 5 plus root 109 over 6 and 0. and then 5 minus root 109 over 6 and 0. Okay, whoops, 2 more questions. Solve the following equation. Ooh, that's sort of an odd question to have right in the middle of this. I wonder if we get quadratic to finish it off. Okay, so it's an I hate fraction question. The lowest common denominator is going to be y plus 6, and a 7. Okay, so I need to multiply each of these terms, this one, and this one, and this one, by that. So for the first term, I'll just write it all out. So 1 over y plus 1 over y plus 6 is equal to 1 over 7. So each of these I'm multiplying by y plus 6, and a 7. y plus 6, and a 7. y plus 6, and a 7. So in the first one, the y's cancel out. So I'm left with 7 times y plus 6 times 1, which won't change things. The next one, the y plus 6 cancels, so I'm just left with a 7y is equal to, here the 7's cancel, so I'm left with y times y plus 6. Okay, let's try and solve this one. So, distributive property, 7y plus 42 plus 7y is equal to y squared plus 6y. I've got a y squared in the game, and so I'm going to bring everything over to the right side to make it equal to 0. So I have y squared plus 6y, that's there already. Subtract 7y on both sides. Subtract 7y on both sides. Did I do that right? I think so. So these cancel out, and then subtract 42 on both sides. Okay, so if I simplify that, it'd be 6 take away 7 is negative 1, minus 7 would be a negative 8y, minus 42. Okay, is equal to 0. So now I'm going to try and factor that. Hopefully I can factor. Things that multiply to 42, 6 and 7, that's not 8. 14 and 3, yeah, but that's not 8. It'd be real nice if they'd have given us one that would have worked. But, seeing as how I can't figure out how to factor that, I guess I go to my new all-time favorite, quadratic formula. So my quadratic formula, A is going to be 1, B is a negative 8, C is a negative 42. So x is equal to minus b, 8, plus or minus square root b squared, so negative 8 squared, minus 4 times a is 1 times c is negative 42. All over 2 times a is 1. So x equals a positive 8 plus or minus square root. Negative 8 squared is a positive 64. 4, that'd be 168, so plus 168 all over 2. 8 plus or minus, if I add those, well, that'd be 232, I think. Square root of 232 all over 2. I'll bet we can do something with the 232. 232 calculator, 16. We've got to be 16. Divide 16. How about, not 25, 9? No, 9 won't go. How about 4? 232 divide 4. Yeah, that works. 4. So 4 times 58. 8 plus or minus square root 4 times square root 58. Those two together give me the 232 over 2. So it's 8 plus or minus 2 root 58 all over 2. And then that 2 will divide into each thing up above there. So it'll be 4 plus or minus root 58. So that'll be my answer. Now, are they asking for x-intercepts or what are they asking for? That's a long question. No, they just want solutions. So my solution would be that right there. 4 plus or minus root 58. Okay, Last question. Oh, it looks like another one with quadratic formula. Now notice this one, there's an equal sign there, and in order to use a quadratic formula, everything has to be on the same side. So before I start assigning any a, b's, or c's, I need to move those things to the left side. So it'll be 3x squared minus 5x minus 5 is equal to 0. I don't think factoring will work, so away I go with the quadratic formula. I think I'm getting good at it now. So minus b plus, plus or minus square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Do you have that formula memorized yet? So b is a negative 5, a is a 3, c is a negative 5, over a is a 3. Simplifying, negative, negative, these will cancel, so it would be positive 5, plus or minus 5 squared is positive 25. 4 times 3 is 12, times a negative 5, it'll be positive 60, I think, all over 6. So it'll be 5 plus or minus root of 85 over 6. And 85 is 17 times 5. I don't think you're getting 17 times 5? No. Yeah, 17 times 5. You're not simplifying that. So this would be my answer. And they say give exact and approximate solutions. Oh, that's a good question. So this one here would be exact solutions. And then what you do on your calculator is you figure it out what the decimal thing would be. So you'd go 5 plus the square root of 85 equals divided by 6. So for the first one, I'd get 2 points. They want it, later they must tell you how many decimal places, but I'm getting 2.3699, etc. And then you do the same thing and go 5, I'll try it, 5 minus the square root of 85 equals divided by 6, and I get negative, oh, my pen's not working. My pen's still not working. Negative 7.03256 or something like that, and round to the appropriate decimal places. All right, hopefully that helps you with that homework assignment.